Harvey's Hot Takes with Bryan Hayes, and we're going to be focusing on another Leaf loss, their fourth in a row since the Olympic break. Bryan Hayes, we know this team is going to be selling at the deadline, but my question for you is a little more precise. What in your mind, if you're a Leaf fan, what would possibly make you happy? What would possibly make you satisfied, Bryan Hayes, at the 3 p.m. deadline? What would have to happen for that to occur?
I think the more selling, the better, Jay. I think the accumulation of as many draft picks and as many prospects as possible and try to turn over as much of this roster as possible, that's a win, right? A commitment that this isn't a one-off season, that this isn't about injuries accumulating and that's why they're in the position they're in. Or just one of those seasons, hey, it happens. You know, if that's the mentality, I think that it's going to be very disappointing and very frustrating. And I don't get the impression like there's any Maple Leaf fan out there, even the most eternal optimist, that believes this is just a fluky season gone awry. You know, this has been a disaster all year. They've been awful all season. And prior to this, yes, they went to the playoffs every year, but they were not that close to winning a Stanley Cup. They've won 2 playoff rounds, you know, throughout the Matthews era. They've won 2 playoff rounds in the last 20 years. You know, if you go back to prior to the Matthews era. So I think a win would be Brad Treliving and the organization committing to having to fix significant pieces, but also committing to the future of this team. And what I mean by that is, again, not trading a Bobby McMahon for another player who's currently in his prime. This cannot be a tunnel vision scenario where Treliving thinks specifically about the 26-27 season. He's got to be thinking of draft picks and prospects because they're going to miss the playoffs by a lot. There's a very good chance they're not going to have their first-round pick because as much as this feels like an 18-wheeler falling off a cliff, I'm not sure it can go so far over the cliff where they end up bottom 5 in the league and they actually retain their draft pick that is currently held by Boston. So if you're going to miss the playoffs and it's going to be a disaster and you don't have at least a first-round pick that you've acquired at this trade deadline, it is going to be a death march until July 1st for Leaf fans. It's already excruciating enough. So a win would be a commitment to the future, not next year, but 3 years down the road, 5, 7 years down the road, because this is not something they can retool in one trade deadline, one July 1st, one offseason, and think they can get back on the horse and get running again next year. That's a win. Understand it's not a retool. It's got to be bigger than that. It's got to be deeper than that. You've got to get picks. You've got to get prospects. You've got to commit to the future beyond just next year.
Bryan, what you're talking about is current Leaf management making some pretty tough decisions, not just this week, but over the next few months. Do you trust current Leafs management? Keith Pelly, former president of this network, now president of MLSE. Brad Treliving, his dad started Boston Pizza. Do you trust current Leaf management to make the tough decisions that need to be made over the next few months?
I think we'll have that answer by 3 p.m. on Friday. I think that's when we're going to know. Because everything I just laid out, if they don't go in that direction, would suggest that they're not worthy of being trusted. What that would suggest is that pride is in play, ego is in play, and job security is in play. And when those 3 elements are in play, you're setting up for disaster. And it will be deja vu for Leaf fans because we've been through this, right? If you're a Leaf fan, you've been through this. There's a famous quote that Bane gave in The Dark Knight Rises, right? Where he goes, I was born in the dark. Right? Like, this is what I know. You know, I've been through this. If you grew up in the 80s, if you were a Leaf fan from like 06 through 2016, you know what darkness is all about, right? You're not like Bruce Wayne. You're like Bane if you're a Leaf fan. So you're aware of what it looks like. You're aware of what it feels like. And that would suggest that's what's coming, right? It's you just keep giving up on picks, keep giving up on prospects, keep trying to dig yourself deeper, keep believing that there's an excuse that you can make that will convince people that, again, this is just a one-off. This is about injuries. This was a fluky season. Hey, what are you going to do? We'll get back at it next year, and I promise you it's going to be okay. We're going to have that answer by 3 p.m. on Friday. If they make commitments to the future beyond next season, that means they understand it's deeper than this. They understand that their job security should not be at the front of the line. It should be the betterment of the organization. It should be about trying to commit to a championship pursuit as opposed to just a playoff pursuit. But I can't sit here and say I can guarantee that, Jay. I cannot sit here and say I guarantee it because they've been reluctant to do anything this year, right? Brad Treliving is the GM. He's fired an assistant coach, and he's claimed Troy Stetcher off waivers. That's about all he's done. He's been reluctant to do much more. Keith Pelly, the man above him, obviously has been reluctant to do much more. So I'm skeptical. I'm a little bit nervous of that darkness, but we'll have that answer by 3 p.m. on Friday.
Bryan Hayes, thanks for this.
Hot Takes is presented by Harvey's. Harvey's Pickle Poutine is back. And for a limited time, get deep fried pickles for only $3. Harvey's, it's a beautiful thing.